Okay, so now we're going to talk about 5 key strategies, and some of the things that we've touched on already come into this as well. But these are the 5 things I like to think about when we're thinking about how to manage anger. When a child has lots of anger outbursts, there are so many emotions that we can feel as parents. Things like embarrassment if it happens in public, and kind of shame and fear about what might happen if this carries on as they get older, worry and stress. So if we can have a framework to work with, it will help reduce that overwhelm and perhaps that complexity of those feelings, and help us feel like we can actually do something strategic. So adapting the environment is an important one. If we've done our detective work, we might discover that there are things in the environment that are contributing to your child's stress. And so just to reiterate, when I talk about stress, I'm talking about that stress response, the fight or flight, which leads to anger or anxiety. So if it's fighting or it's running away, and anger is the fighting. So under all anger, and under most anger, is going to be stress. So if we can see that there are certain things in the child's environment, whether it's at school or at home or with friends, if we can see that there are things that might be adding to their stress and contributing to these outbursts, building up and contributing to things overflowing, then we can try and adapt them. We can see what we can do to adapt them. As an example, if a child is, perhaps a teacher has observed that they're struggling in the playground a little bit because they don't quite know how to join in, and as a consequence they're butting in and maybe getting rejected by some groups and ending up on the edge of some groups, and actually playtime's quite stressful for them. How can we adapt that environment? That environment isn't quite working for them. It's making them stressed, it's making them sad. They might not be able to express that, and we might not have heard about that openly, but it might have just been observed or something that we suspect. Maybe that can be adapted somehow. Maybe there are semi-structured activities in the playground that could be arranged or that are already happening, where there's a teacher supervising, and that teacher can help that child with initiating the interaction. So it might be that there's some free play going on in the playground, but there's also a teacher or a teaching assistant in one corner with some hula hoops and skipping ropes, and everyone gets to play with the hula hoops, but they take turns and they do different games with the hula hoops, but it's adult guided, and that will help the child to be less stressed because they know that they don't have to do everything themselves. It's not quite so overwhelming. So that's just an example of how the environment could be potentially adapted. And just to say as well that we've got to really think outside the box here, because we might just be seeing anger outbursts when your child gets home or on the way home from school. We might not connect it with, oh, it's because of playtime. It might take quite a while to make that connection, and there might be other things going on as well. So it takes a bit of detective work and maybe a bit of trial and error as well. The next strategy, moving to the left from adapting the environment, is preempting triggers. So again, this takes some detective work, and it's important to perhaps keep a diary, keep notes, so you can start to spot patterns and triggers. So for example, I've just mentioned that perhaps your child's outbursts mostly happen after school, and you've maybe done some detective work as to why that might be happening. And you might decide that one reason is low blood sugar, therefore you're going to have your snacks ready. You're not going to be waiting till you get home. You're going to have them ready as soon as your child comes out into the playground. They'll be there. You'll be there with that snack bar. So you're preempting, and you'll have a drink for them as well, because they might have been dehydrated and not been drinking enough throughout the day. And also you might realize that if you make any demands of them, if you ask them how their day was, or you say we're going to go to the shop before we go home, that's it. Too much. Outburst straight away. So you might be able to preempt that by making sure that actually you've done all those things. You don't need to go to the shop on your way home. Actually, they just need at least half an hour of no questions, no demands, and no errands, and they just need half an hour to read or watch TV or something like that. So that's another way of preempting potential triggers. The next strategy is coaching emotion regulation skills. So we've talked about this a tiny bit. I've explained that even at the age of 11, if your child's at the upper end of the parent club, it's really unlikely that they will consistently be able to regulate their emotions, to, if they get angry, calm themselves down effectively. Some, of course, will be better at it than others. Everybody develops at a different rate, and these social and emotional skills very much develop at different rates. And the way you coach your child with emotional regulation is going to vary depending on their age and their developmental level. But one thing I've touched on is just labeling the emotion, just identifying with it. Oh, that must feel really frustrating. That must feel really sad being left out. I think I would feel that way too. But then you could extend that by modeling or giving examples. When I feel like that, when I feel left out, I just take some time to do something nice for myself. And then I remember all the times when I wasn't left out, or just talk something that helps you, thinking about what helps you, and teaching them to perhaps use it next time. Or emotion regulation skills might be teaching them physically how to calm their nervous system. It might be firm hugs will help to soothe their nervous system, or having a self-massage, or just doing something movement based. But thinking about all the different things that could work for your child. And I think we're going to come back to that in a minute. We're also going to come back to managing behaviour effectively. I think, in fact, I've got ahead of myself, and I've got slides for each of these. So I'll go to that now. Let me just go to the adapt the environment slide and make sure I haven't missed anything. Can you see the adapt the environment slide?
Yeah, we're on that now.
Yeah. So I've got ahead of myself a little bit. Yeah, we've talked, I think I've covered pretty much everything about adapting the environment, and it's just helpful to look at these examples here of stress cups, two different fictional children. You can see how kind of quite small things have just added to their cortisol levels, added to their stress levels, and it's meant that at some point they've had an outburst. And I've just given some examples here in terms of adapting the environment as to some things that can empty the cup and also prevent it filling up in the first place. So communicating with school, I talked about the playground example. That's about preventing the cup from filling up in the first place. Whereas other things like creative outlets and physical activity are more about emptying the cup.